All right, today we're diving into a pretty radical theory from our source material that completely flips our picture of the ancient world on its head. So, I want you to just forget what you think you know about early humanity for a minute. We're going to explore a world before the Great Flood, a world that might have had a single giant continent and a population that could have easily been in the billions.
So, everything we're about to talk about, it all boils down to this one huge question. What if the pre-flood world wasn't some sparsely populated landscape of hunter-gatherers? What if it was absolutely teeming with people, maybe even more people than are alive right now? It's a wild thought, but let's see how the argument unfolds.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the how, the mechanics behind this idea of a massive population boom. Then we'll actually run the numbers to see how you could get to billions. After that, we'll explore what this world might have looked like, how people would have moved across it, and finally, what all of this could mean for our very definition of civilization.
Okay, so the whole basis for this idea of a massive population comes down to one crucial difference between their world, the antediluvian world, and ours: how long people lived. The author argues that it wasn't just that they lived for centuries, it's that they could have children for centuries too.
I mean, just look at this. The difference is absolutely staggering. Today, the average reproductive window is what, maybe 20 years? But according to this interpretation, people before the flood could have kids for up to 500 years. That's not just a small change. That is a complete game changer when it comes to population growth.
And look, this isn't just some wild guess. The author points directly to scriptural verses like this one for evidence. The phrase, numerous upon all the face of the land, isn't interpreted as just a few scattered tribes here and there. No, it's taken to mean that the world was genuinely, truly densely packed with people.
So, how in the world do you actually get to billions of people? Well, the author lays out a hypothetical model. Now, I want to be super clear here. This isn't meant to be an exact historical census. It's a thought experiment to show just how fast a population could explode under these very unique conditions. The basic rules for this thought experiment are pretty simple. You start with just 10 couples. You assume each of those couples has 10 children who survive and grow up to have their own families, and a new generation pops up every 50 years. Seems simple enough, right? Well, let's see what happens to the numbers. After 200 years, you've got 2,500 kids in just that latest generation. Okay, that's a decent-sized town, but we're really just getting warmed up.
Because just 100 years later, bam, that number has shot up to over 62,000. You can start to see that exponential curve really beginning to take off. And it just keeps going. By the 400-year mark, we've blown past 1.5 million people in a single generation. Now we're talking about the size of a major city. Fast forward another century, we're at 500 years. And that single generation is now nearly 40 million people strong. The numbers are just becoming incredible. At the 600-year mark, the newest generation alone is almost 1 billion people. But remember, that's just the kids. That's not the total population.
Because here's the kicker. Since people are living for centuries, all the previous generations, the parents, the grandparents, the great-great-great-grandparents, they're all still around. So when you add everyone up, the model hits a mind-blowing theoretical population of over 6.1 billion. Think about that for a second. That's more people than were alive on the entire planet in the year 2000. Now, a population that huge needs a lot of space. And this brings us right to the second major part of this theory, the idea that the world itself, the geography, was totally different. We're talking no separate continents like we have today.
You can really see the contrast here. Instead of the 7 continents we know, separated by huge oceans like the Pacific and the Atlantic, this theory pictures a world of one land, a single gigantic landmass that almost wrapped around the globe, with no Pacific Ocean at all.
And again, the author isn't just pulling this idea out of thin air. This geographical model is based on interpreting scripture. Passages that talk about a time before it was divided are taken literally, to mean a time before a single landmass was physically broken apart.
Now, this one giant continent wasn't a perfect, unbroken loop. The theory points to references of something called a sea east, which would have been right about where our modern Atlantic Ocean is. It acted like a big channel, separating the two ends of the landmass.
Okay, so let's put it all together. You have billions of people living on one continuous landmass. What happens? Well, according to this theory, you get a massive, non-stop wave of human migration across the entire planet, all driven by that incredible population pressure. The theory places the origin point of humanity, the cradle of the race, on the eastward side of this supercontinent, basically in the land that we now call America. So this would have created a natural constant push westward. People would have just kept moving west, across land that's now under the Pacific, and eventually populating what we know as Asia, Europe, and Africa.
And this is where things get really interesting. This leads us to the theory's most provocative claim. If a highly populated, advanced civilization once spread across the whole world, then what do we make of all those Stone Age artifacts found all over the Old World?
The author argues we might be looking at history completely backwards. The theory suggests these primitive tools aren't the start of civilization. They're the vestigial endings. They're what's left over after groups migrated thousands of miles away from their advanced home, got cut off, and over centuries just forgot. They lost the knowledge their ancestors had.
So you have two completely different ways of looking at the exact same piece of evidence. The conventional view sees a crude stone axe and says, this is step one, the dawn of human ingenuity. But this theory looks at that same axe and asks, what if this is the very last, degraded remnant of a highly advanced civilization that we've completely forgotten about?
And that really leaves us with a final big-picture question. The challenge of this theory isn't really about the exact population count or the maps. It's about questioning the very nature of progress itself. Do you believe history is a simple, straight line, always moving forward and upward? Or could it move in cycles? Can great civilizations rise, spread out, and then slowly decay, leaving only primitive echoes of what they once were?